He crashed into her fortress. Now she'll obliterate anything for his love. The screech of rending hull was the last thing Rowan heard before darkness swallowed him whole. He awoke choking on ash and pain, lungs burning, every limb protesting as he tried to shift. Violet sand pressed against his cheek, sharp stones digging into his side. The horizon, a sleek passenger ship only hours before, now lay twisted and smoldering behind him, its metal carcass strewn across an alien landscape. The air was acrid, heavy with smoke and something unfamiliar. Rowan pushed himself upright, blinking blood and grit from his eyes. Boots crunched on the sand. Shadows blotted out the faint violet sun, looming larger with every heartbeat. Tall figures, clad in black armor of overlapping chitin and obsidian, surrounded him. Their faces were masked, their language a series of guttural, grating sounds that sent a chill through Rowan's battered frame. He tried to speak, but a rough hand seized his jaw, forcing his mouth shut. Another figure, a Thaln, he realized, the dominant race of this world, snapped a heavy iron band around his neck. The cold metal bit into his skin. He tried to tear it off, but it held fast, clicking with a finality that turned his blood to ice. The message was clear. He belonged to them now. Hands hauled him to his feet. Rowan stumbled, barely able to walk, as they dragged him through a city unlike anything he'd known. It rose from the bones of the mountain itself, twisting towers carved into stone and connected by bridges of dark metal. The streets swarmed with Thaln, their strange eyes glinting in the gloom. Machines hummed and clicked overhead, casting shifting shadows on the violet sand. Rowan's head spun as he was shoved through archways and down narrow corridors, finally thrust into a chamber lined with iron bars. Other captives crowded the cell, humans, yes, but also creatures he couldn't name, all hollow-eyed and trembling. The stench of fear was suffocating. He pressed against the bars, searching for escape. Beyond them, the heart of the mountain had been hollowed into an arena, a pit of indigo sand, blood-stained and ringed by 1,000 jeering faces. Drums thundered. Rowan flinched as a monstrous, scaled creature was driven into the ring. Opposite it stood a figure both terrifying and magnetic. She was tall, her blue skin luminous in the torchlight, shock-white hair pulled back from a striking face. Armor of iridescent plates clung to her athletic form, catching flashes of gold and green as she moved. Her eyes, impossibly golden, burned with a fierce intelligence. The crowd chanted her name, Zira! Zira! Rowan watched, transfixed, as Zira circled her foe. The fight was brutal, a blur of claws and steel. She ducked beneath a sweeping tail, drove her blade through scales, twisted and leapt, moving with impossible grace. The beast collapsed, blood staining the indigo sand. The crowd erupted in wild applause. Zira's eyes swept the arena, then the pens. She paused when she reached Rowan, and for a heartbeat their gazes locked. Hers curious, assessing, his defiant, desperate. A guard with a baton approached the cell. He jabbed it through the bars, gesturing at Rowan. Out! He barked in harsh, broken standard. Before the guard could unlock the door, Zira's voice rang out, sharp and commanding, echoing off stone. Stop! That one! He is mine. I claim him. The guard hesitated, eyes flicking from Zira to Rowan and back. He seemed to weigh his options, then stepped aside. As you wish, champion. Rowan's collar was secured to a heavy leash. He was led from the cell, across the sand still warm with spilled blood, and into Zira's looming shadow. The murmurs of the crowd followed them, laced with envy and curiosity. She guided him through spiraling corridors, up steep steps carved from living rock. Her quarters were high above the arena, sparse and imposing, all clean lines and muted colors. Weapon racks lined the walls, each blade gleaming, each piece of armor meticulously cared for. A single window cut into the stone offered a view of the city below. Without a word, Zira led Rowan to a small alcove off her main room. It contained a simple cot and a basin, nothing more. She studied him as if expecting protest. Rowan met her gaze, forcing his voice to remain steady. "This will do." Her lips quirked, a hint of amusement, before she turned away. "You will keep my chambers in order. Maintain my armor, my weapons. Make yourself useful." He nodded. It was survival, not submission. Rowan was a technician. He would adapt. Days blurred together. Each morning, he polished Zira's armor, careful to avoid the old scars marring the metal. He cleaned her quarters, observed her routines. He watched the way her posture slumped when she thought herself alone, how she winced as she peeled her armor from her scarred arms. She spoke little, but when she did, her voice was steady, her gaze unwavering. Rowan found broken gear in the armory and set about repairing it. He devised clever fixes for her malfunctioning air filter, improvised new tools from scrap, and kept his small alcove meticulously tidy. He saw Zira watching him sometimes, her golden eyes thoughtful. One evening, as twilight bathed the mountain in violet shadows, Rowan sat beside a small fire he'd coaxed to life in the hearth. He stitched his torn shirt, hands moving with practiced care. Zira approached, her presence filling the room. She knelt beside him, her armor shedding faint iridescence in the firelight. Her hand brushed his shoulder, inspecting the neat repairs. Her touch was unexpectedly gentle, her blue skin warm against his. Rowan looked up, meeting her gaze. The air between them was charged, words unspoken. "Perhaps you can repair more than machines," Zira murmured, her tone softer than before. For the first time, Rowan saw something flicker behind her golden eyes, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Tension simmered in the stronghold. It vibrated through the stone halls, wound itself into every glance and word. Rowan felt it from the moment he entered the mess hall, trailing behind Zira as she strode toward her usual table. Conversations faltered. The scrape of utensils on metal plates seemed amplified, echoing off the cavern walls. Dravik sat at the far end, surrounded by his followers. He was taller than most Thaln, his slate-gray skin marked by jagged scars, eyes cold and watchful. As Rowan passed, Dravik's lip curled. "Your pet looks fragile, champion," Dravik drawled, voice carrying across the hall. "Maybe he'd like a match with a sable stalker. Let's see if he's good for more than sweeping floors." Laughter rippled around the table, but it died quickly. All eyes swung to Zira. She didn't flinch. Her reply cut the air like a blade. "He will face it at dusk." A hush fell. Rowan's heart thudded, but he kept his face neutral, refusing to give Dravik the satisfaction of fear. After the hall emptied, Zira led Rowan into the armory, her expression unreadable. She gestured for him to sit. He settled on a crate, pulling out the battered datapad he'd scavenged from the wreck. Fingers flying, he searched the arena archives for any mention of the sable stalker. "It hunts by vibration," he murmured, scrolling through reports. "Fast, armored. Not much gets through its plating, sensitive to movement. If I run, I'm dead." Zira paced, arms folded. "It will kill you," she said flatly. Rowan looked up, meeting her golden eyes. "Or it might outsmart itself." She studied him for a long moment, as if searching for weakness. Instead, she found calm resolve. Dusk arrived, bleeding violet and gold across the sky. Rowan stood at the edge of the arena, stripped to his shirt, the iron collar heavy at his throat. The crowd's anticipation thrummed in the air. He glanced up. Zira watched from her high balcony, hands gripping the rail. A gate clanged open. The sable stalker padded into the ring, its presence enough to draw a collective gasp. It was as long as a grown man, sleek as wet obsidian. Its body shimmered with overlapping plates, iridescent in the low light. 6 legs moved in eerie silence, each tipped with sickle-shaped claws. Its head was a wedge of armored bone, eyes a cluster of glowing lenses, all trained on Rowan. He did not run. He forced himself to remain utterly still, counting his breaths. The beast circled, muscles coiling and uncoiling beneath its armor. It prowled closer, tasting the air. A hush settled over the arena. Rowan gripped the curved metal shard he'd hidden behind his back, a splinter from the ship's hull. He waited, heart hammering, until the creature paused, puzzled by his lack of movement. He scraped the shard against a stone, just once. The sharp sound rang out. The sable stalker froze, every eye locking on the source. Rowan flicked his shirt across the sand, away from himself. The beast lunged for the fluttering fabric, claws tearing it to ribbons. While it was distracted, Rowan darted sideways, using the shard to lever open the iron gate of the holding pen at the arena's edge. He made as much noise as he could, rattling the bars. The stalker, maddened by the cacophony, charged at him. At the last moment, Rowan ducked behind the gate and slammed the lever. The pen's door swung shut as the beast barreled inside, claws skittering on stone. The gate clanged closed, locking the sable stalker safely away. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the crowd erupted, shouts, howls, fists pounding the rails. Above, Zira watched, stunned admiration shining in her eyes. She pressed a hand to her chest, relief and pride warring in her expression. Dravik's scowl was thunderous. Rowan stood in the center of the arena, chest heaving, sweat trickling down his temple. He looked up at Zira and she nodded. Once, sharply. He had survived. Later, in Zira's quarters, Rowan sat on the edge of his cot, picking at a scrape on his forearm. Zira entered, carrying a small bowl of salve. She knelt beside him, her hands unexpectedly gentle as she dabbed ointment on his bruised skin. "You fight with your mind," she said, voice low. Rowan smiled, wincing as she pressed a tender spot. "It's all I have." Their faces were close, breath mingling. The firelight flickered in her golden eyes, reflecting something softer, more vulnerable. Zira's hand lingered on his shoulder. Silence stretched between them, charged and intimate. "You were not meant for the arena," she whispered, "but you made it your own." He reached up, fingers brushing hers. "I had a good reason." Her lips parted, but before she could answer, a commotion echoed in the corridor. Harsh voices, hurried footsteps. Zira's expression hardened. Later that night, after most of the stronghold slept, word arrived. Zira was needed for a late patrol in the lower tunnels. She buckled on her armor, tying her hair back with swift, efficient motions. Rowan, standing nearby, felt an unease he could not shake. "I'm coming with you," he said. Zira's brows drew together. "It is dangerous." "All the more reason you shouldn't go alone." She hesitated, then nodded once. They descended together into the labyrinthine tunnels beneath the city, corridors carved by machines and old forgotten hands. The air was cool and thick with echoes. Zira led, blade drawn. Rowan followed, alert, nerves taut as wire. As they rounded a bend, Rowan's gut twisted. Shadows moved ahead. Too many, too close. Without thinking, he lunged, shoving Zira aside, just as a spear hissed past, grazing his shoulder. Dravik stepped from the darkness, eyes gleaming with malice. He was flanked by 3 followers, weapons drawn. "Traitor!" Zira spat, struggling to rise. Dravik smiled, slow and cold. "You're weak, Zira. You let the human infect you." A net, heavy and weighted, sailed through the air, entangling Zira's limbs. She fought to break free, but the mesh held fast. Dravik advanced on Rowan, blade gleaming in the dim light. "You should have died in the arena," he snarled. "I'll finish it now." Panic surged in Rowan's chest, raw, electric. As Dravik drew closer, something inside Rowan snapped. He felt a torrent of emotion not his own. Dravik's fear, sharp and overwhelming, bubbling beneath the mask of cruelty. Rowan seized it, amplified it, hurled it back with desperate force. Dravik staggered, eyes wild, choking on invisible terror. His followers faltered, dropping their weapons and clutching their heads as dread washed over them. Zira tore free of the net, slicing it with a hidden blade. In a blur, she dispatched Dravik's men, sending them crashing to the ground. Dravik stumbled back, eyes unfocused, paralyzed by the psychic onslaught. Rowan collapsed to his knees, blood trickling from his nose, vision blurring. Zira rushed to his side, dropping her sword, her hands framing his face. "Rowan," she breathed, her voice trembling with awe and something fiercer. "What did you do?" He managed a shaky smile. "I just reflected what was there." Zira's eyes blazed, not with fear, but with wonder. She bent forward, her lips brushing his, fierce and claiming, her hands tangled in his hair. Rowan melted into the kiss, feeling the trembling bond between them snap into something undeniable. Zira pulled him close, her breath warm against his ear. "You are mine," she whispered. And for the first time, Rowan knew it meant something more than captivity. Dravik's retreat was not one of defeat, but of venom. Blood still oozed from the shallow cut on his jaw where Zira's blade had grazed him in the tunnels. Rage twisted his features as he stormed through the carved corridors of the stronghold, two of his shaken followers at his heels. He wasted no time, striding directly into the chamber of the ruling council, Thaln elders robed in bone and steel, their faces unreadable behind ornate masks. Dravik's voice rang out before the doors had fully closed. "He is a mind-bender," Dravik spat, barely containing the tremor in his voice. "The human, Rowan, he turned our minds against us. He is the stuff of legend, of nightmares, a danger to us all." The council's leader, a towering elder with skin like petrified wood, exchanged glances with the others. The ancient Thaln did not move, but the hush that fell was thick with tension. At last, the leader raised his hand. "Bring the champion and her captive. Now!" Zira received the summons as she and Rowan cleaned their wounds by the fire, still flushed from the danger and the bond they had begun to share. She stood, jaw set, golden eyes fierce. "They will try to break us," she said. "Let them try," Rowan answered, voice steady. When they entered the council chamber, he walked unchained at her side. The council's hall was a cathedral of shadows and echoing footsteps. The elders sat above on their dais, gazes cold and unyielding. Dravik waited below, face slick with sweat. The council's leader spoke, voice echoing against stone. "Zira, champion of the arena, you stand accused of sheltering an abomination. This human bears forbidden power, mind-bending, a stain upon Thaln memory." Rowan's heart hammered, but he kept his eyes fixed on the council, refusing to show fear. Dravik jabbed a finger at him, voice shrill. "He twisted us, made our thoughts rebel. He is a threat to every Thaln." Zira stepped forward, her presence magnetic. "Dravik lies," she declared, her voice ringing like a war drum. "He ambushed us, seeking murder in the dark. My captive defended us, in his own way." Dravik's lips curled. "He broke the minds of my men. I saw them, clutching their heads, weeping." Zira's gaze was steel. "You saw cowards defeated by courage. You saw fear reflected, not created." The elders conferred in low, urgent tones. One, cloaked in the blue feathers of a long-dead avian, leaned forward. "The old tales speak of mind-benders, those who sowed chaos in the ancient wars. You dare bring such a one into our midst?" Zira lifted her chin, every muscle taut with resolve. "Rowan is not a weapon. He is a person, a survivor. He used what gifts he has to defend himself and me from betrayal. No law condemns the innocent for surviving." The council leader's eyes narrowed. "He must be surrendered, for purification." Rowan's blood ran cold. He understood enough of their customs. Purification meant death. Zira looked to Rowan. He met her gaze, and after a beat, nodded his trust. She laughed then, the sound low and dangerous, echoing through the hall. "You would have me give up my heart?" she mocked, voice trembling with defiance. She drew her dagger in a single motion, slicing her palm. Blood welled, dark and rich. Zira turned to Rowan, cradling his jaw. In front of all, she pressed her bloodied hand to his cheek, marking him. "I claim him not as captive," she declared, voice fierce, "but as soul-bound, blood to blood, spirit to spirit." Gasps rippled through the council. Even the oldest elders recoiled. The soul bond was sacred, older than law, older than the council itself. "Madness!" Dravik shouted, face twisted in outrage. "You shame yourself and your people. This is blasphemy." Zira's lips peeled back in a snarl. "This is honor. You call for judgment? Then let us invoke the trial of reckoning. My fate against all accusers. If I fall, so does he. If I prevail, our bond is law." The council erupted into argument. One elder pleaded tradition, another spat ancient curses, but the trial of reckoning was binding, woven into the very bones of Thaln society. At last the leader raised his staff. "It will be as invoked. The champion shall face the council's finest in the arena at dawn. If she survives, her claim is law. If she falls—" His gaze flicked to Rowan, cold and final. "Both perish." Dravik smirked, his confidence returning. "I will face her last. She will beg for mercy before the end." Zira did not flinch. She bowed, then turned on her heel, Rowan at her side. As they left the chamber, whispers chased after them. Fear, awe, envy. Night fell. The stronghold's halls were silent, save for distant mutters and the low moan of the wind through stone. Zira sat in her quarters, armor set aside. She wore only a simple tunic, her shock-white hair falling loose about her shoulders. Rowan sat beside her on the cot, the firelight painting their shadows on the wall. He reached out, tracing her jaw with gentle fingers. A smile played at her lips, though worry shadowed her eyes. "They'll send their best," she murmured. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "We'll win, together." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. The rough pad of his thumb found the line of her cheekbone, where her blood had marked him only hours before. Rowan searched her face, voice soft. "Do you regret it? The soul bond?" Zira opened her eyes, fierce and unguarded. "Never. In all my life, no bond has been forged by fear, only by courage." She took his hand, pressing it to her chest. "Can you feel it? My heart. It beats for you now." He nodded, breath catching. "And mine for you." For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled, painting golden light across the room. Outside, the stronghold was still, bracing for what the dawn would bring. Slowly, Zira's mind brushed against his, tentative at first, then bolder. Rowan closed his eyes, letting her in. Their thoughts twined, memories surfacing. Rowan as a child, tinkering in his father's workshop. Zira on her first hunt, blood singing in her veins. Instincts mingled. His careful logic, her warrior's intuition. Fear and hope commingled, the ache of longing threaded through every shared image. He saw her loneliness, felt her yearning for something beyond victory. She saw his hunger for belonging, the ache of exile. For the first time, there were no barriers, only truth. Their hands remained clasped. Zira leaned her forehead to his, whispering, "They do not understand us, but they will. Tomorrow, we fight as one." Rowan smiled, eyes bright with unshed tears. "We will." In the quiet, their minds remained joined, spirit to spirit, holding each other through the coming storm. At dawn, the arena was packed. The city's pulse thudded through the stone, a living, fevered thing. Rowan felt it in his bones as he stepped into the stands, surrounded by Thaln young and old, their faces alight with anticipation or shadowed by ancient fears. Above the pit, banners snapped in the chill air, stained with the colors of past victors. Zira strode into the arena's heart, every movement a declaration of strength. The first rays of sun glinted off her blade. Her armor was pared down, light for speed, iridescent plates shifting as she rolled her shoulders. Golden eyes locked onto Rowan in the crowd. He felt her presence through their link, a fierce electric certainty. He sent her a wave of focus and pride, and she drew it in, her spine straightening. Across the sand, the Blood Guard advanced. 3 of the Council's elite, faces hidden behind ceremonial helms, weapons gleaming. They moved as one, a wall of muscle, discipline, and lethal intent. The crowd fell silent. Even the Council, seated high in their stone alcove, watched with bated breath. Rowan's mind sharpened. He let his senses stretch, feeling Zira's tension, reading the Blood Guard's patterns. The first opponent circled left, heavy sword raised. Left, Rowan whispered in his mind, the link warm and clear. High feint, in 3 seconds. Zira shifted, reading the sand beneath her feet. As the Blood Guard's blade arced down, she darted forward, scooping a fistful of sand. The weapon missed. She flung the grit into her foe's visor, blinding him, then spun low, her blade a flash of silver. The first Blood Guard fell with a cry, his sword clattering to the ground. The second and third closed ranks, pressing her from both sides. Rowan focused, mapping the fight with the precision of a mechanic rebuilding an engine. Second guard favors his right leg, kick the knee, then twist left. Zira responded without hesitation. She pivoted, ducking beneath a heavy swing, her foot connecting with the weak joint. The guard staggered. She twisted left, using his momentum to drive him into his comrade. Blades scraped against armor, sparks flying. The crowd gasped, tension snapping like a taut wire. High slash coming, block, then elbow, Rowan sent, the image flashing in her mind. Zira caught the incoming blade on her forearm guard, twisting her torso. Her elbow cracked against the guard's helmet with a satisfying crunch. He stumbled back, stunned. Now only one remained, circling warily. Zira's breathing was steady, her movements sharp and precise. She feinted, drawing him in. Rowan's voice was a steady rhythm in her mind. Fake left, then roll right. He'll overextend. She did. The guard lunged, overcommitting. Zira rolled right, coming up behind him, her blade pressed to his throat. Yield, she commanded. He hesitated, then dropped his sword. The arena exploded with sound, cheers, roars, 1,000 fists pounding stone. Zira stood, chest heaving, blood splattered across her forearms. She raised her blade in victory, golden gaze scanning the stands until it found Rowan. He sent her a pulse of pride and fierce love, pure, bright, impossible to hide. Zira smiled, a quick private expression just for him. She drank in his strength, the pulse of their bond surging through her veins. A gate crashed open at the far end of the arena. Dravik strode in, armored from shoulder to shin, a heavy axe gripped in his fists. His expression was thunderous, eyes burning with hatred. The crowd's excitement warped into apprehension. Dravik circled, muscles coiled. Rowan reached out through the link, skimming the surface of Dravik's mind. He felt the old injury, a hesitation in the right leg, and beneath the bravado, a pulse of fear, weakness, failure, the terror of being exposed. He favors the right, Rowan sent, voice calm. Guard low after his swing, he'll overextend. Dravik charged, roaring, the axe a blur of steel. Zira feinted left as Rowan had predicted. Dravik overreacted, his swing wide and reckless. She slipped beneath his guard, her blade scraping across his exposed side. Dravik bellowed, whirling, swinging the axe in a vicious arc. Zira danced back, just out of reach. Rowan's mind raced. He's getting desperate. Watch for the feint. When he commits, move behind him. His knee is weak. Dravik lunged, a wild two-handed blow. Zira sidestepped, pivoting behind him. She smashed her boot into the back of his knee. Dravik howled, collapsing to one side, the axe falling from his grip. Zira stood over him, blade poised at his throat. Dravik's breath came ragged, pride shattered in the dust. She spoke, voice echoing across the arena. You are no champion. You are a coward, and your time ends now. Her blade fell in a single decisive stroke. Dravik went still. For a moment there was only silence, a collective holding of breath. Then the arena erupted. The young warriors thundered their approval, cheers rising like a storm. Rowan felt the crowd's awe and hope, their hunger for something new. Zira turned, pointing her blade at the council's high seat. The old ways are over, she declared, voice ringing with authority. We will be led by strength and wisdom, not fear. The elders shrank back, their power broken by spectacle and conviction. The young Thalns surged to their feet, chanting Zira's name, their voices echoing into a dawn bright with promise. Afterward, the fortress was quiet. The roar of the crowd had faded, leaving only the low hum of distant voices and the crackle of a fire burning somewhere deep in the halls. Zira sat on a low bench near the window, her arm outstretched as Rowan tended a shallow wound that ran just beneath the curve of her bicep, a token from the final fight, already clotting but raw against her blue skin. Rowan worked with practiced hands, cleaning the gash with a cloth and carefully binding it. His touch was gentle, almost reverent, and Zira watched him with a soft focus, her golden eyes no longer hard and distant but open, inviting. You are thoughtful, little technician, she said, her tone teasing but laced with real affection. He glanced up, meeting her gaze. I wonder how a whole world could fear a gift, he mused quietly. His words drifted between them, fragile but unafraid. Zira cupped his cheek, her palm warm against his skin. The gesture was intimate, deliberate, a promise made in daylight, not in shadows. With you, I am whole, she murmured. Their minds touched, as familiar now as breath and heartbeat. Rowan felt her relief wash over him, a tide of exhaustion giving way to profound affection, unity, and something deeper still. Zira let herself lean into the link, her loneliness dissolving. She had spent a lifetime as the solitary champion, her strength a barrier rather than a bridge. Now, Rowan was her anchor, their connection a source of courage as well as comfort. He pressed a kiss to her wrist, lingering just long enough to savor the trust in her eyes. You know, he said, voice low. You changed everything. Zira smiled, her fingers curling into his hair. No, technician. We changed everything. They stood together at the window, the city sprawling below, a living sea of violet roofs, silver towers, and winding streets carved into the bones of the mountain. The morning light slanted across the stone, illuminating new banners. Zira's sigil, now flown beside the council's faded crest. Down below, Thaln society shifted on its axis. The council, once unyielding, had begun to accept Zira's vision, strength tempered by insight, tradition reshaped by new ideas. Rowan watched as a group of young Thaln warriors trained in the yard, their drills punctuated not only by the clash of blades, but by moments of stillness, of observation. Older warriors watched, grudgingly impressed as strategies replaced brute force. Captives, once seen only as chattel, were being guided into roles that matched their skills. Rowan had seen a human mechanic working beside a Thaln engineer, their laughter echoing up through the stone. There was resistance, of course, but the change was real, rippling outward from the arena and the council hall into every corner of the city. He turned to Zira, finding her watching him. They listen to you now. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. They see you too. Your wisdom shapes them, even when you do not speak. Rowan's cheeks colored. It's your will that makes the difference. Perhaps, she replied. But a blade is sharper when guided by a steady hand. You steady me. He smiled, heart full. You give me a place to belong. That night, the fire in Zira's chambers burned low, casting gold and copper shadows across the stone. She sat cross-legged on the furs, Rowan beside her, their bodies close in the hush of late hours. Zira traced the pale scars on Rowan's arm, the marks of old struggles and recent survival. "You risked everything for me," she whispered, her voice rough with emotion. Rowan met her gaze, his hand covering hers. "I'd do it again," he replied simply. She leaned into him, head resting against his shoulder. He pressed a soft kiss to her brow, and she closed her eyes, breathing him in, letting the quiet fill every space inside her that had once ached with solitude. Their bond was unbreakable, a tapestry woven of psychic connection, shared danger, and fierce devotion. In the silent glow of the fire, memories surfaced. Fights, laughter, the moment Zira's blood marked Rowan's cheek and made him hers in the eyes of their world. She felt the trust he gave her, the way he met every challenge with invention and hope. "You know," Zira murmured, "I thought I would always be alone." Rowan turned her hand in his, lacing their fingers together. "Not anymore." Change continued to ripple through the city. Zira led the warriors in morning drills, but she now demanded strategy as well as strength. Rowan taught those willing to listen, human and Thaln alike, about machines, repairs, and clever solutions to old problems. Captives found themselves treated as people, their abilities respected and cultivated. There were arguments, setbacks, even outright rebellion from a few, but Zira and Rowan stood together, her blade and his mind, her fire and his calm. One evening, after a day spent in council, Zira returned to their quarters and found Rowan adjusting the fit of a new collar, a symbol not of ownership, but of unity. She smiled, crossing the room in 3 swift strides. "Still tinkering?" she teased, settling beside him. He grinned. "I suppose I always will. There's always something to fix." Zira cupped his face, her thumb tracing the line of his jaw. "Not everything is broken," she said, voice tender. He kissed her softly, and for a while, there was no need for words. Word of their partnership spread beyond the city. Other strongholds sent envoys, some curious, some wary, all bearing witness to the changes. A counselor once sworn to tradition sought Rowan's counsel on rebuilding the ancient aqueducts. A pair of young warriors asked Zira to teach them the dance of the soul bond, their eyes shining with hope. As the seasons turned, the old ways faded, never fully gone, but changed, softened. Zira and Rowan led together, their union the foundation of a new era for Thaln and all who called the city home. One night, as the city slept and the mountain stars burned bright, Zira pulled Rowan close beside the fire. "Our future is unwritten," she whispered, voice fierce and loving. Rowan smiled, his hand finding hers. "Then we'll write it together." And so they did, their love the spark that lit the way into a new dawn. Their rule was not unchallenged. Though the council's old power had shattered in the arena and the city's banners now bore the mark of Zira's victory, not all Thaln welcomed change. In smoky corners of the fortress, murmurs still stirred. Old warriors, their pride stung, eyed Rowan with suspicion, muttering legends of mindbenders and foreign influence. But no one dared challenge Zira openly, not after seeing Dravik fall, not with her blade gleaming and Rowan's keen gaze never far from her side. Together, Zira and Rowan transformed Thalnos. The arena, once a pit of blood and fear, became a crucible for skill and wit. Warriors sparred under new rules, each bout a test of strategy and inventiveness, as likely to end in a clever feint as a decisive strike. The sand was still stained, but laughter now echoed off the ancient stones. Rowan designed contests that required teams to solve puzzles mid-battle or outthink, rather than simply outfight their opponents. Even the most stubborn old guards found themselves watching in grudging admiration as the next generation rose, sharper and wiser. The fortress itself changed. Hallways that had once echoed only with orders and footfalls now rang with spirited debate. Rowan could often be found at the center of a knot of engineers and warriors, diagrams scrawled across data pads, his hands moving as he explained a new mechanism or a tactical principle. Zira presided over these gatherings, sometimes silent and watchful, sometimes arguing with her champion's fierce intensity. Together, they turned the keep into a place where ideas were prized as highly as strength. But it was in their private hours that the world's transformation felt most profound. The fortress could be alive with voices and intrigue, but there were always moments set aside for just the two of them, moments that belonged to no one else. In the hush of evening, Zira would draw Rowan close, her powerful form curled protectively around him on their shared cot. She would tuck his head under her chin, the warmth of her skin and the steady rhythm of her heartbeat grounding him in a world that could still feel alien. Rowan loved to run his fingers through her shock-white hair, marveling at the contrast between her fierce exterior and the tenderness that bloomed in her touch. "You're softer than you let anyone believe," he teased her once, voice muffled against her collarbone. "Only for you, technician," she replied, her words half a growl, half a caress. Sometimes they spoke aloud, sharing fragments of memory and hope. More often, their minds brushed in wordless communion, dreams and doubts, plans and promises weaving together until it was impossible to say where one ended and the other began. Rowan would send her a flash of memory, a childhood spent beneath the blue skies of Earth, his father's laughter as they tinkered with broken radios. Zira would respond with the memory of her first hunt, the wild exultation of the chase, her longing for something more than endless battle. Together, they shaped new dreams, blending human ingenuity with Thaln courage. One evening, after a long day spent settling a dispute between rival hunting clans, Rowan found Zira on the balcony that overlooked the city. She stood in the twilight, her silhouette outlined against a sky pulsing with alien stars. He crossed the threshold quietly, slipping his arms around her waist and pressing his cheek to the solid warmth of her back. Her body relaxed instantly into his embrace, her hands rising to cover his. For a long moment, they watched the city together. Lanterns glimmered in the winding streets below, voices floating up on the evening breeze. Rowan felt their bond pulsing between them, a steady, silent reassurance. In the quiet, he let his own doubts flicker through the link. "Do you regret any of this?" he asked softly, voice barely louder than the wind. Zira's answer was immediate, certain. "Never," she said. "You changed everything. For me, for all of us." He turned her gently, wanting to see her face, to read the truth in her molten golden eyes. "What now, my fierce champion?" he asked, a smile tugging at his lips. Zira's mouth curved into a slow, promising smile. She stepped closer, strong arms enfolding him, her white hair tumbling over his face like silk. "Now you have a queen to counsel," she purred, her tone playful, thick with affection. "And I have a king to cherish." Rowan laughed, the sound caught between surprise and delight. He pressed his forehead to hers, letting their breath mingle in the cool air. "King, is it? I suppose that comes with responsibilities." Zira's eyes sparkled. "Heavy ones. You must keep me wise, challenge my pride, and remind me to be gentle, at least in private." He grinned. "And in return?" "In return," she whispered, "you will always have my strength, my blade, my heart, my loyalty, until the stars fall." He kissed her then, deep and lingering. The world faded away, leaving only the two of them, human and Thaln, partners in every sense. The kiss was a promise, renewed with every heartbeat, of trust, of unity, of the future they would build, together. Later, as they lay entwined beneath a sky swirling with constellations neither had names for, Rowan traced patterns along Zira's arm. She murmured stories of Thalan heroes and ancient queens, her voice a low music in the darkness. He replied with memories of Earth, silly songs and soft laughter, their cultures blending at the edges in ways both strange and beautiful. Days passed, and the city continued to change. Zira and Rowan stood before the council, not as conquerors, but as guides. Warriors trained with both mind and body. Captives became citizens, their skills sought and honored. New laws were written, fusing tradition with invention, and the old guard, seeing the joy and unity spreading through the city, slowly lost their will to resist. But the heart of Thalnos was always this: the quiet moments, the whispered endearments, the shared strength between Zira and Rowan. Their love, impossible in the world they had inherited, had become the foundation of something entirely new. And so, beneath alien stars and the promise of an unwritten future, Zira and Rowan held each other, queen and king, soul-bound by love, courage, and the will to shape a destiny neither could have imagined alone. Our story ends here. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.